Senator Capito.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank all of you for being here. Mr. Elwell, let me just make sure I understand exactly, because some of the questioning from Senator Duckworth is similar to what I was going to ask you. So the plane, the 737 MAX 8 with the MCAS, has been flying since 2017. Is that correct?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. And you said, and I have a report here that says, in the wake of the airworthiness directive and discovery of possible issue with MCAS on Boeing 737 MAX. This is from quoted from an article in Bloomberg, I believe. It says a number of pilot groups raised concerns over whether or not pilots had been sufficiently made aware of the system that is unique to that aircraft. Did you just say that nobody had raised issues about this system previous to either one of these accidents, or maybe in between the two of them?
No, Senator, what I was remarking upon is we look at the data that comes off aircraft. It's called FOCO data, and please don't ask me what that acronym, the letters mean. But what that is data that literally comes off the flight data recorder. It's ones and zeros that come off of aircraft. And airlines get that data. They use that data in their safety management systems. And when we ask for that data and we ask for it to be filtered on certain parameters, they give that data to us. And what I'm saying is there were no incidents of MAX flights in North America. There was no incident of this happening. Now, when I say that also that the pilot reports that Senator Blumenthal mentioned earlier, the ASRS or the NASA reports, I personally read, there were 24 of them. I read every one of them. And I'm not the key expert in this determination, but they were all looked at and determined, and I concurred, none of them went to the MCAS. None of them demonstrated an MCAS malfunction. Okay. And that's what I meant. Now, what you're referring to.
What am I referring to?
Senator, I believe what you're referring to is when the accident first happened, there were some pilots who said, we would have liked to have read about that MCAS. We would like to have known that wasn't in the manual. And one of the things that we did in our emergency AD was direct to have MCAS explained in the flight operating manual.
Okay, so that was in between the first accident and the second accident. Okay, then let me ask you then about the training then that occurred after that. It's given in a short, self-administered online course. How does that work? Does that are you in a testing center? Mm-hmm. Are you on your own in your own laptop and you just check box, box, box? How's that administered? How is a self-administered, I mean, we've all taken self-administered computer tests. How do you ensure that this is absorbed and that the person actually taking it is the person taking it?
Well, first of all, as a former pilot myself, I will tell you that isn't, when you go through differences training, and that's what that is, differences training, mm-hmm. That isn't something you pencil whip because it's the aircraft you fly. Right. And our pilots in the United States are incredible professionals. Now, they can do that. They can do that when they go to the academy, when they go to the schoolhouse for their respective airline. They can do that in recurrent training. They can do it in initial training. I imagine, and although I can't tell you now if this is the case, that they could also do it on their computers at home. But all of that training has a test at the end, a quiz at the end, a test for knowledge. And the important thing to note here is that the determination was made because of the flying characteristics of the MAX versus the NG, that this iPad training that mm-hmm. you read about was what was needed by pilots to be able to fly the MAX.
So then that is was that required then in between the two?
That was
in
always,
the United States?
It was always required.
It was always required?
Yes, ma'am.
Let me ask you about another sort of thing that you've seen out in the press, and I don't really have it specifically here, in terms of the fix to the airplane. That there are certain fixes that are going to be offered to certain airlines and that may be different pricing and how much is it going to be. There's been sort of a conflicting story in the media. How do you respond to that? Do you know anything about that?
So, Senator, I read those reports, or I read those articles, and those I don't believe were characterized as fixes. Those are options. When an airline or anybody purchase an airplane like anything else, there are options. As I was explaining before, if it is a safety critical display in the cockpit and we certify it, it's required. It's not an option.
Right.
So, AOA displays, some airlines and some pilots and pilot training groups, for instance, the Navy, loved AOA displays in their cockpits. The Air Force, not so much. It is a matter of every piece of real estate in a cockpit is precious. And you put one gauge up there,
Right.
you're sacrificing another.
Right.
And these are important distinctions. And in this case, those displays are not safety critical because there are other ways for pilots to gauge their energy state. And that's what an AOA gauge does. It tells you your energy state.
Well, not understanding the technicalities of it, I would say that being a member of the general flying public, it's hard to believe that a safety item that could possibly be connected to taking down 2 jets and killing over 300 people would ever be characterized as any kind of an option.
Right.
So I want you to have the chance to, and I understand it is more technically involved than what I'm representing, but that's how it's perceived to the flying public. Thank you.
Thank you.
Senator Markey.
Mr. Elwell,